I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving deep into a revealing journey with PJ LaChele. She has written a wonderful book. It's called Naked and Unashamed. This poignant book takes readers through the struggles and triumphs of living authentically in faith. We will discover how exposing your truth can unveil the transformative power of God's love. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her wonderful book. The links are below this interview. We're delighted to have PJ join us here today, and her business partner and editor, Audrey Stromberg, as well. Hi, good to see you, ladies. How are you today?
You too, Logan.
It's good to see you too.
So tell us a little bit, PJ. Let's give the folks at home an overview of what your book, Naked and Unashamed, is all about.
It is actually, it's a collection of blog posts. I was writing a blog when I was working at a pregnancy crisis center in Tinley Park. And I just basically was walking through my faith walk in real time. And I've gone through some pretty interesting crises. And I was just sharing how I was navigating being true to myself and true to my God, and still being able to serve others.
And what did you need to do to become true to yourself and true to your God?
Be transparent. I think that's the only way the only word that describes it best. The reality of who I am with God is I'm his. Mm-hmm. I'm his child, and I needed to be able to come to him with the truth about where I was at any given moment, knowing that I had access to him at any given moment. And I lived my life like that in front of everybody, because it made absolutely no sense for me to try to shield other people from the things I had to go through on a daily basis. It made me ineffective to try to be one way in front of God and another way in front of other people. So rather than try to put on a mask, I just remained. I remained exactly who I was at any given moment.
Wonderful. You were your authentic self, which is what is, I think we're all supposed to be. Now, Audrey, what did you think when you saw PJ's work? I know it was blog posts at one point. It was compiled into a book. You're her business partner. You're her editor. What did you make of the manuscript when you saw it?
Well, when I first started reading the blog posts before it became a book, anyone who has ever talked to PJ has described that it's like talking to her, reading her posts. Mm-hmm. Reading the book has also been like, I will hear her in my head, even when I'm not around her. I will hear her in my head when I'm reading it, and it's like I'm having the same conversation. So it has been a journey of just, I mean, we're both transparent with each other and very honest and very open about everything that we go through. So reading it was just like having a normal conversation that we've done almost every day of our lives together. So it hasn't been any different. And it really is just her walking out in real time her faith, and it has inspired many, including myself, to do the same, because I probably would not be the same person I am today if I hadn't met a few people along the way besides PJ and read her book and that have been transparent with me. So it's like the more transparent you are, the more you're able to become yourself. And the more you're able to stay yourself in front of everybody, no matter what they think of you, no matter what they, feel how you present yourself. It don't matter. You stay true to who you are.
It tends to make other people feel comfortable being themselves around you.
Yeah. Well, if you're comfortable in your own skin, other people will be comfortable in their own skins as well. You named the book Naked and Unashamed. I imagine that has to do with, again, being your authentic self. but sometimes it's hard to be naked and unashamed. So what was it like exposing for the world a lot of personal experiences, personal stories, and putting them out there in print?
It wasn't as difficult as you might think. The reality of practicing this and making a lifestyle out of that kind of authenticity, it makes it easy to express it at any given time. I I started my walk with God when I was 12,
Mhm.
and it was in the middle of a crisis, as was most of my life. So if I was going to start then at such an early age, being as innocent before God as possible, it made it a lot easier for me to just keep the progression going.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier when you start out young enough to not be afraid of who you are, however rough and unrefined it is. If you're doing that at an early age and you just make a habit and a lifestyle of it, it comes pretty naturally.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about a moment in the book when you were writing it, you felt kind of vulnerable? Should I include this? Should I not include this? And where your vulnerability was kind of tested?
Um, there's a few of them, actually. Um, there was a season when I was butting heads with my family,
Mhm.
and I was raised in a lot of trauma. And there's a lot of people that would be content to see me just shh and go sit over there and don't say anything about what you know is true,
Mhm.
because it would cost them. And they put up a fight. And I was in a lot of turmoil about it because I knew that I was not the only one that was going through something like that.
Mhm.
And I did not want to shield myself from exposing that at the cost of hurting people who really need to have a mirror put in front of them.
Yeah.
So I had to do a lot of praying and a lot of talking to God and to my friends that I know me well enough. And it made me safe,
Mhm.
and I kept going.
Great. Well, we're glad you did. Audrey, let me ask you, how has the transparency, the openness that PJ has approached her story, her book, her life, her blog posts, how has that impacted your life and your relationship with God?
Um, I think with not just her blog posts, but also in talking to her on a day-to-day basis, I think it has helped me, um, it has definitely helped me to be more honest about myself with myself. It has definitely helped me to be more transparent with others about struggles that I've gone through,
Mhm.
because you don't go through something for to and get out of it just for yourself. You go through it to help other people get through it, get
Mhm.
through whatever struggle they might be going through, and they might be going through the same struggle you just came out of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been able to approach God in a different way than I used to when I was younger. And I've been able to see him in a different light because of it as well. Because most people think of God as this, angry, um, vengeful, why does he let bad things happen to good people? Well, he gave us free will,
Yeah.
Mhm.
free choice. It's the same difference between living in the United States or living in a country where you have all these restrictions on what you can say or do. I highly doubt we'd be able to have these types of conversations, especially with you, Logan,
Mhm.
about stuff like this in any other country, because it would probably shed too much light on, I don't know, a bunch of different things that governments don't want shed light on.
Yeah.
Being in the Navy, I've been able to go to different countries and see that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to live my life more transparent and open and be more just forthcoming with who I am in God. and not have to worry about what people think, how it might make them feel.
Mm.
I mean, yes, you got to have wisdom and tact when you talk to some people. And at the same time, sometimes they just have to take it at face value.
Yeah, absolutely. PJ, let me ask you, how has your faith influenced the way you approached writing this book?
It has made me fearless. I'm not the kind of person, I've always been, when I was younger, I was a people pleaser.
Mm.
And it was mostly out of trauma because, when you're raised in a traumatic environment, your instinct is to just stay small, stay low, be as unseen as possible so that the storm can just go right by you.
Mm.
I've gotten into the habit of feeling kind of like Peter out there on the water in the middle of a storm and said, Lord, if it's you, bid me come. And if he says, come, I'm coming. You don't have to like it.
Yeah.
It's okay. I know who sent me. And so I go. And that's how I wrote the book.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, let me ask you this. You talked a little bit about growing up in a chaotic household. A lot of us did, a lot of us do. A lot of people's problems in their mature life stem back to their childhood and their upbringing. What's your best advice to somebody who was raised in perhaps an abusive home where the parents were heavy-handed and both verbally and physically, perhaps?
You have to start with where you are. Part of being transparent with God is being transparent with yourself. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and go, yes, I know that's what was. We don't have to do it anymore. We don't have to do it that way anymore. What do we have to do so that we can be free? You have to make choices based on the fact that God loves you. He is not a heavy-handed father. He's not a judgment. People tend to put human attributes on God and God attributes on people. And expect people to be these gracious, forgiving things when they have free will and they don't have to. And they're born out of their own trauma.
Yeah.
And out of empathy for everybody else going through something similar. Because one of the things I said in the book on several occasions, everybody's going through something.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they're taking it out on you.
Yeah.
What were the people that were raising you? What were they going through that made them behave the way they behaved to you? Once you realize that everybody has come through something and it's made them behave the way they behaved, you feel a sense of forgiveness and empathy for even those who've abused you, who've spitefully used you. You understand that everybody's going through something. Let me be a little nicer. Let me be a little more patient with them. Let me be a little more patient with myself.
Exactly.
It gives you grace to be gracious to other people as well as yourself.
Right.
Be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break.
I agree. I agree 100%. You've got to be beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here.
Absolutely.
To paraphrase the Desiderata, you have to be gentle with yourself because if you're not, who else will be, right?
That's valid
Exactly.
point.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned in the book Kaleidoscope Perspectives. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. We go to a very multicultural church. Okay. There are at the least 72 different nationalities and cultures that are represented in our 6,000 member congregation. That's a gift in Chicago. Let's start there. This is one of the most racially homicidal cities in the world.
Chicago.
And to have a church that is determined to bridge that gap and to be a part of that congregation is a very wonderful gift, but it's also a daunting assignment. I wanted to start a magazine at church. And I was looking at other magazines and I saw that you have Gospel Today, you've got Christianity Today, and all of these Christian pieces of literature are still very polarizing.
Mm.
And I wanted something that spoke to the beautiful variety that I get to see every Sunday.
Yeah.
So God gave me the idea about a kaleidoscope. It's bits of broken glass, different shapes and sizes and colors that are all put in one panel and pointed toward the sun. And to have a kaleidoscope perspective means that you get to see all of the beauty that belongs in the universe in a way that makes each piece as valuable as the other. And I wanted to have a magazine called Kaleidoscope Perspectives. That's where it started. That's where the blog came from. That is the name of the parent company that we have, that we're using to create different jobs for people who are disenfranchised. Anyone that, okay, so let's talk about single parents. We're talking about veterans. We're talking about ex-offenders. We're talking about the neurodivergent. These are all the people that typical people, for lack of a better term, seem to have a difficulty working with. But they have as much of a right to a decent piece of humanity as everybody else walking on this planet.
To have a purpose.
To have a purpose that is bigger than just surviving. And the whole point of everything we're doing is to make sure that some people understand that they're valuable and they have a purpose and we can help them get there. So that was the entire purpose and point of starting with a name like Kaleidoscope Perspectives.
Great. I like it in part because kaleidoscopes are something that children love to play with as a child. So it evokes that emotion as well.
And innocence.
And the innocence of all that. And also, you know, they're quite imaginative and dreamy when you look through a kaleidoscope, you know.
Yeah.
I haven't looked in one in about 50 years, but
I
think it's time to
haven't.
pick up one again, right?
I think you're right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It sounds like you are you both involved in the same church? You're both congregants of the
Yes.
same church?
Lighthouse
Audrey, tell me
Church.
about your experience in the church. Is it empowering? Is it a good fit? Is it a good place?
Oh, it is a very good fit and a good place.
It's home.
It is home. I grew up in a different church altogether. Spirit of God Fellowship, a lovely church, a smaller version of what Lighthouse Church is, smaller only in size. And you know, when you finish growing in one spot, you have to kind of find another place to grow. Because if you don't, you're gonna become stagnant and you might decrease instead of increase in your growth. And so being able to go to Lighthouse Church of All Nations, led by Bishop Dan Willis
and Pastor Garland Mays.
Pastor Garland Mays, our new senior pastor for the past year. It has been such a incredible journey to be singing in the choir, singing on the praise team. Our choir just released an album this past year.
It's nominated for 4 Stellars.
Yes, and has been nominated for 4 Stellar Awards. And just being able to reach out to people, even during the pandemic, we were still reaching out to people and making sure that everyone had a connection.
Yeah.
We would have, you know, Park and Praise, where they came to the campus just in the parking lot.
It was like going to a drive-in movie.
Yeah.
And everybody parked their cars in the church parking lot and we had a platform outside. We made sure that even though we had to be apart, we stayed connected.
Yes. And so we even have what we call drive-through prayer as well that we used to do.
We do it every year now.
We still do it every year now. But drive-through prayer started because of the pandemic, and we were able to pray for people, of course, with masks and gloves and, you know, maintaining that respect for everyone during that time. It was just a way to help impact a community as well as grow in your own faith and in your own walk and in meeting other people, walking with other people, just doing things that you normally wouldn't think of doing.
It's a very innovative environment. It's the term spirit led takes on a whole new definition when you're around people that literally stay so in tune with what God wants to do for his people, that they're willing to pivot at any moment that there's a shift in the atmosphere and we have to make do.
Yes.
Now, I have very similar, but a little different because my story starts further back. This was my second church home. This was my first adult choice in a church. I grew up in one church in the city, and I ended up going to the Navy and getting married and coming back home. And this was my first church home as a grown-up.
Yeah.
With 2 kids and a husband and trying to figure out how I wanted to do life. And this has been my church home for almost 30 years now.
Wonderful.
I've gotten to see a lot of what that evolution looked like, and to be in some place that's deliberately multicultural, even at the resistance of communities around us.
Yeah.
We've caught a lot of hell because we were determined to bridge any gap that was available that was getting in the way of people getting to know each other and getting to know God. So it makes for an environment that is more like a teaching hospital, where you have people coming in and gleaning and growing and then going back out and maybe going to another church or another state, but they have a new understanding on what it means to be e pluribus unum, of many one.
Yeah.
And that's where I get it from.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It sounds like a great church. I mean, so many churches feel less than Christ-like often.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be in a church that seems very inclusive, that is innovative, that is bringing people together even during a time like COVID. The drive-in was so much of a better solution than watching it home on Zoom, because people are at home all alone. To be able to get out, to go to services, even in your car, sounds like a great thing. I would have done that if that was available, for
It
sure.
was so much fun.
We still do it every summer now.
Yeah.
Because everyone loved it so much, especially when in the summer we have wonderful days. Of course, our bishop likes to play for 100-degree weather, and then we say, "Oh,
slow down."
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot of fun.
Sounds good. PJ, let me ask you, what do you hope readers take away from Naked and Unashamed?
In a nutshell, my prayer is that in seeing me be honest and transparent, you see God. The reality is, if I am not being transparent, you can't see God through me. And having that as a vehicle to be transparent and lead others into their own transparency, I want them to be able to be free enough to see God themselves, in themselves, and in other people. Truth is, whatever you're looking for, you're going to find.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll be encouraged to see God through other people.
What do you think a good first step is for folks who want to be, naked and unashamed?
Start by telling the truth about yourself. You can't tell anybody else's truth.
no."
The only truth you know is the one you tell yourself, and the one you find in God's word, because he made you.
Right.
And if God actually made you, then the Bible should be considered an owner's manual. And if you work your life like the instructions say, you'll have, what's that turn of phrase? A more harmonious outcome.
Sounds good. We all want more harmonious outcomes, that's for sure. And if you're not honest with yourself, who are you going to be honest with? I mean, that's job one. This above all, to thine own self be true.
To thine own self be true.
Yeah. Absolutely. Before we leave you today, just want you to talk to me a little bit about Kaleidoscope Perspectives work. You said it was, the blog post name, and it's also become an organization, right?
Yes. It's a parent company through which we have so far 2 businesses.
Mhm.
First business was named after my late husband, George Bernard Allen. It's called George B. Allen's Lawn Barbers, and it's a landscape and lawn care company.
Our tagline is, we take pleasure in our assignment.
Mm.
He always loved taking care of lawns, and I think one of the happiest pictures we have of him was him
On a riding lawnmower.
yes. And so we love doing things that are eco-friendly. We love doing things that help lawn care, not just lawn management, lawn care.
We're not in pesticides and the chemicals.
No, and we're into making sure we train our employees on how to use the equipment, and one of the equipment that we train them on is their own body. Not everybody realizes that your body is a piece of equipment as well, and you have to take care of that just as much as you take care of a lawnmower, hedge clippers, anything you use.
A lot of times, because the people we're looking to hire come from such difficult experiences, they're used to people using them to death.
Yeah.
That's basically the story of my late husband. He has had a criminal record. He was an ex-offender, and any job he got, he would work for hours and hours and hours with
12-hour shifts with very little pay.
Very little pay and very little time to eat. And he would come home in so much pain and not comfortable in his own skin enough to do something that was good for him. And we don't want our staff to be like that. We want them to understand that we exercise corporate social responsibility. It's an important thing to know that everything's connected and everything has value. So we have to treat everything with kindness and respect. And that's what we do for all of our companies. The second company is a bakery and cafe that we're looking for a brick and mortar for now. And it's called Paradox Cafe.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And where will Paradox Cafe be set up, hopefully?
Somewhere in the Blue Island, Robbins, South Holland area. South
suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's where we operate mostly out of.
Yeah.
Sounds great. PJ LaChele has written a wonderful book. It is called Naked and Unashamed. It is a powerful book that takes readers through the struggles and triumphs of living authentically in faith. Through reading her words of wisdom, it'll expose you to your truth and help you unveil the transformative power of God's love. PJ and Audrey, thank you both so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan.
I appreciate it.